This is for Gavin Smith. Gavin, I just wondered, I mean, you've now actually gotten some longitudinal study time on hazard mitigation planning. Are there improvements in this next generation of hazard mitigation plans? What would you say they are, and where would you say we are on the path to nirvana?
Right. I assume we're mic'd up and we can hear. So I should have been clear is that, so this was a post-disaster mitigation act of 2000 study. Dave Gottschalk led, seminal study in the late 90s on hazard mitigation plans. And so there are improvements from those plans, but we've got a long way to go. I think some of the promising findings is that those plans that involved land use planners, that involved robust committees that dealt with issues of governance were stronger. They were more forward-looking, but by and large, most of the local plans, including those in coastal communities, which are among the most vulnerable, were actually quite weak.
I'm from Washington State, and I'm from the west side of the Cascades. We're a water-rich area, and we are having population increases of 20-30% in the next 50 years. It's huge. And my question really is, in terms of planning, that a lot of successes can be made with what you said, discussions between planners and between floodplain managers for guiding future growth. APA, the Association of State Floodplain Managers, this is for Gavin, has come up with a special center that deals with hazardous mitigation. Could you please talk about that, and also talk about ways that there can be increased cooperation, partnerships between this organization and us and APA's effort into the whole field of hazards?
Sure. So I guess maybe to be clear is that there's a hazard mitigation kind of research group that's led by Jim Schwab, and many of them in the room know Jim. So that exists, a center, if you will, within APA. One of the exciting things, thanks for that plug, is that the other thing that's happened is, in fact, Darren Punchard may be in the room. Darren and I and several others have Barry Hokanson has actually done the lion's share, is created a hazard mitigation and disaster recovery planning division at APA, which is a big deal. It was very difficult. It took us about 3 years to pull off. And so the intent of that division is to help get planners more engaged in this very issue of risk reduction and disaster recovery. So that's underway. And so we hope that's one venue to improve the degree to which planners are actually, land use planners are involved in this process. In order to think about, I guess your last point, how to better connect planners and floodplain management, I think that the idea of professional associations and the now that we've got a division, I think there's opportunity to think about those connections. Continued conversations about how we might do that, how we might do joint training, for example, is another way to think of it, and have kind of a dual invitation maybe to do training. Maybe some of the folks from APA could come to ASFPM and vice versa, or would do a dual barnstorming tour, so to speak, of maybe the national. We get the two divisions, the two associations together. Maybe we do a national, some type of national training program. Just some ideas.
So I'm going to give everybody time to think, but this is such a good opportunity. A lot of us have been following Tulsa for a long, long time, and I want to know if there are challenges to the vision that you and Ann Patton and others have kind of have come up with. That there's some land use challenges I heard. There's some encroachment things, taking advantages of the real estate assets that were made development possible by the purchases. And so can you please just give a status where we are today, or where you are today, and what pressures you see for what has happened? Pressures to reverse it.
Am I on?
Yes.
That's a great question, and it's key to what's going on in Tulsa right now. Is elected officials focus on the current problems And regardless of how successful you are, in fact, the City of Tulsa's citizens, through our participation in CRS, benefit from $750,000 per year in reduced flood insurance premiums. But when you have new elected officials who've never been through a flood and who have not participated in this program over the last 20 years, they don't know about what the issues are. It's not on their agenda. In fact, there was an article in the paper in the Tulsa World the other day for one of the leading counselors in the city of Tulsa. In response to the flooding that was going on, he said, well, this just shows that Tulsa doesn't really have a floodplain problem anymore, and that we have diverted an awful lot of money from fixing streets to floodplain management, and where we don't even have a problem. So that's the problem, is apathy, and it's an ongoing issue of all of us that we have to face, is educating our elected leaders. And I salute the state of Illinois and you for, here we have an actual champion, elected official who is a champion, and that's what we've got to have. And we often overlook, that we have an ongoing obligation to educate our elected officials so that they don't not have a clue. Does that answer your question?
I heard there were some purchase efforts. I heard that there were some efforts to purchase some of the areas that were set aside for retention and detention, and with my, I've got some plants in the community that.
That's always an issue, because anytime that you leave a piece, a parcel undeveloped, you're going to have developers. And in fact, the mayor of the city of Tulsa has decided that the Arkansas River, even though it's one of the largest river basins in the nation, that all that vacant floodplain land needs to be developed, because we've got Keystone Dam right upstream, and that's going to solve all of our flooding problems on the Arkansas River. And now they want to create a series of scenic lakes on the river and sell publicly owned property to the development interests. And that's a challenge that we have, and it's ongoing, and it's a big problem, and it's a problem that we all face as floodplain leaders.
Okay, thanks. One last question over here.
Oh, I'm
sorry, go
here
ahead.
as well. As the elected official that we're hearing about, again, I kind of got into this obviously with the large flood that we had in 2013, and we had well over $100 million in damage, so it was a significant flood. My district is comprised of farm communities. We don't currently have, until we went through this exercise, we did not have officials in place whose job is to look at the floodplain management regionally. So I think two things are going to push us in the direction of dealing with this, not only at the larger level, but at the smaller level, which is my district, is first of all, it's when the insurance premiums go up. I'm starting to receive phone calls. So when your elected officials started receiving phone calls, all of a sudden they're going to be asking what's going on. So I'm glad that we're in front of that. But the purpose behind our coalition is, and we hope, we don't know, is by creating this regional coalition where we have all of the community officials involved and engaged in it, that we are applying for state grant and federal grants, showing that we're proactive. So we hope that it will be a model to show people throughout the country that yes, you indeed, even if you're a small community, you need to plan and prepare, and if so, you will have more credibility and access to the money that is available to help with flood mitigation.
Thanks. So I think one last question.
Dave Fowler. This is for Senator Rezin. I'm going to echo Ron's compliments for you being here. I think it's just fabulous that we have legislator and elected officials here. But I took part in a foundation symposium on urban flooding. I think there was a report that was being written for the Illinois legislature, and I don't know if you had a part of that or not, but maybe you didn't. But I was just wondering if you knew when that would be released. And then my second part of my question is, do you have like a plan, or are you putting something in place when you're talking to your fellow legislatures in Illinois, and what are you doing to educate them? And will you come to Wisconsin and talk to our legislators? I'll even start rooting for the Blackhawks if you do that.
Go Hawks, there you go. I'll let Mike speak to your first question because we were just discussing this yesterday.
Yes, there is the Urban Flood Awareness Act that the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, Office of Water Resources, has been ordered basically to have this report on the governor's desk or in front of the General Assembly by the 30th of June, I believe it's the 30th. We're in the final, I was fortunate and honored to have been asked to participate in that committee. It's a large committee, and it's made up of a group of widely varied professional. We had actually, in conjunction with the writing of that act, they had the flood symposium sponsored by ASFPM in Chicago. That, as I said, that report is in its, we've received the draft, but the final and the executive summary have yet to be written, or is being written now by the Office of Water Resources. And it should be, well, it'll be out before the end of the month.
And in my conversation with Mike is we'll take that report, we'll get the condensed version, because as a legislator, even though, for people in this room, you're experts in this particular area, however, we deal with a multitude of different issues. So we'll get the condensed version to the legislators, and my staff, and especially my communications staff, is committed to, I have several projects going on, this being one of them, committed to getting this message out, why it is important. This report that will be filed with the governor in its condensed version will have probably a press conference, and then I'll reach out to my fellow legislators in Illinois and be happy to come up to Wisconsin and anywhere else and explain what's going on. But when people start opening up their insurance bills, that's when the legislators will be receiving phone calls, and so then I think they'll be a little bit more proactive. But we hope to see some because we have been proactive and we feel that we are gaining credibility in this coalition we put together. We hope that that helps us gain some grants to help protect, the smaller communities, which is the district that I represent.